You've been giving your power away. Every time you sought approval, you handed control to someone else. Every time you explained yourself, you invited judgment. Every time you tried to prove your worth, you confirmed you believed it was in question. You've been operating from a position of weakness, and the people around you have noticed. They've tested you. They've watched your patterns. They've learned exactly which buttons to push to make you perform. And you kept performing. You didn't see it happening. Nobody does. You thought you were being considerate. You thought you were being reasonable. You thought you were maintaining relationships. But here's what was actually happening. You were training people to disrespect you. You were teaching them that your boundaries are negotiable. You were showing them that pressure works. Every accommodation became an expectation. Every explanation became a requirement. Every approval you sought became a hook they could use to reel you in. Whenever they needed something from you, the cost has been enormous. Your time, your energy, your mental space, your sense of self, all handed over in exchange for temporary validation that evaporated the moment it was given. You became easier to predict, easier to manipulate, easier to control. The dirty players saw you coming from miles away. But today, that ends. Today you discover why seeking approval makes you a target, why explanation is a trap, why the need to be understood is the weakness manipulators exploit most. You'll learn the 10 principles that separate those who get played from those who become impossible to manipulate. Machiavelli never taught evil. He taught awareness. He observed how power actually moves, not how people pretend it moves. He watched courts and kingdoms and noticed a pattern. Those who needed approval lost. Those who needed to be liked made fatal compromises. Those who explained themselves constantly gave away their strategy. He didn't invent these dynamics. He simply refused to lie about them. What he saw 500 years ago in Italian politics plays out every single day in your relationships, your workplace, your family dynamics. The mechanics haven't changed, only the costumes. Most people operate on autopilot. They absorb social programming that tells them to be nice, be accommodating, be understanding. They mistake weakness for virtue. They confuse boundaries with cruelty. They hand their power to anyone who asks politely enough. These people spend their lives wondering why they feel drained, why their boundaries get violated, why the same patterns keep repeating. They never realize they're following a script written to make them easy to exploit. But you're about to step off that script. Drop this affirmation in the comments right now. I control my attention. Say it. Mean it. That's your first act of reclaiming power. Number 1. Stop explaining yourself to people who already decided. Machiavelli observed that justification is the language of the powerless. Those who hold position don't explain. They decide and move forward. The moment you start explaining, you've already lost the frame. You've accepted that your choices require external validation. Here's what nobody tells you about explanation. It's not actually a path to understanding. It's a trap. When someone demands you explain yourself, they're not seeking clarity. They're establishing a hierarchy where their approval matters and your autonomy doesn't. Every word you offer gives them more material to dissect, more ammunition to use against you, more leverage to maintain control. The dirty players know this. They ask why, because they've learned that question makes you defensive. It makes you scramble. It makes you weak. Think about how this plays out. Someone questions your decision. Most people immediately launch into justification mode. They explain their reasoning. They provide context. They try to make the other person understand. This seems reasonable. It seems mature. But here's what's actually happening. You're handing them your strategy. You're showing them which pressures you respond to. You're teaching them exactly how to manipulate you next time. Worse, you're operating from the assumption that their approval is required for your choice to be valid. Smart people recognize the trap. When someone demands explanation, they pause. They notice the power dynamic being established. They recognize that explaining would be accepting a subordinate position. So they don't explain. They might acknowledge, "I've made my decision." They might redirect, "This works for me." But they don't justify. They don't provide ammunition. They don't hand over their reasoning to be picked apart. Notice the difference. One response invites endless debate. The other ends the conversation. One trains people to question you. The other trains them that your decisions are final. This isn't cruelty. This isn't being difficult. This is awareness. The world already contains people who will exploit your need to be understood. They will use your explanations against you. They will never be satisfied, no matter how clearly you articulate your position, because satisfaction was never the goal. Control was the goal. You refusing to explain isn't mean. It's strategic. It's necessary. It's reclaiming the ground you've been giving away. When you master this principle, you become unreachable. The manipulation tactic that works on most people doesn't work on you. Dirty players probe for the explanation reflex and find nothing. No handles to grab. No levers to pull. You've removed yourself from a game that only exists when both people participate. Drop this affirmation: I choose my explanations. Number 2, silence creates panic in those who need your reaction. Machiavelli understood that power often reveals itself not through action, but through strategic absence. Those who control their reactions control the interaction. Those who withhold response force others to fill the void with their own anxiety. Here's what most people miss about silence. It's not passive. It's one of the most aggressive tools available. When someone attempts to provoke you, bait you, or manipulate you, they're counting on a specific response. They've calculated what they think you'll do. They're prepared for argument, justification, emotional reaction. They're not prepared for nothing. Silence breaks their script. It forces them to sit with their own manipulation attempt. It makes them wonder what you're thinking. It shifts power instantly and completely. Every manipulator relies on reaction. They say something designed to make you defensive. They make an accusation that demands you prove them wrong. They drop a comment calculated to wound. Most people take the bait immediately. They explain, defend, attack back. This seems strong. It seems like standing up for yourself. But here's the truth. You just gave them exactly what they wanted. You just confirmed their tactic works. You just taught them that this approach gets results. But when you go silent, everything changes. They make their move and you give them nothing. No explanation, no defense, no reaction. Just silence. Now they're the one off balance. They're wondering if you heard them. They're wondering if you care. They're wondering what you're planning. That silence lives in their head, rent-free. Meanwhile, you've moved on. You didn't absorb their poison. You didn't hand them your emotional state. You didn't dance to their music. This isn't about ignoring legitimate concerns. This isn't about stonewalling healthy communication. This is about recognizing manipulation attempts and refusing to participate. When someone tries to bait you and you stay silent, you're not being cold. You're being smart. You're protecting your energy. You're refusing to let someone else's agenda dictate your emotional state. The dirty players lose all power when they can't get a reaction. When you master this, you become dangerous in the best way. People realize they can't manipulate you through provocation. They can't drag you into their chaos. They can't make you perform. You become the calm center that refuses to be pulled into someone else's storm. Drop this. I control my presence. Number 3, the need to be liked makes you a perfect target. Machiavelli saw that those who needed to be universally loved made themselves useful to everyone and important to no one. They became tools. The need for approval is the hook manipulators use most. Here's what nobody tells you about being liked. It's expensive. Every time you contort yourself to gain approval, you hand away a piece of your autonomy. You train yourself to monitor others for signs of disapproval. You become hypervigilant about their comfort while ignoring your own boundaries. You develop a reflex. Discomfort in others equals necessary adjustment from you. This seems kind. This seems emotionally intelligent. But here's the reality. You've made yourself incredibly easy to control. Dirty players spot this trait immediately. They watch how you respond when someone seems displeased. They notice how quickly you accommodate, how readily you apologize, how desperately you try to smooth things over. Then they weaponize it. They manufacture disapproval whenever they want something from you. They know a little coldness will make you scramble. A little distance will make you chase. A little disappointment will make you fold. You've become predictable. Predictable means vulnerable. Watch how this operates. Someone wants something from you. Most people would hear no and accept it. But manipulators add an extra step. They act hurt. They act disappointed. They withdraw approval. People who need to be liked feel that withdrawal physically. It creates anxiety. That anxiety drives them to fix it. So they give in. They say yes when they meant no. They violate their own boundaries to restore the other person's approval. The manipulator smiles. The pattern is established. Now they know the price of your compliance is one disappointed facial expression. Smart people break this pattern. They notice the discomfort when someone withdraws approval. They feel the urge to fix it. But they don't move. They sit with the discomfort. They recognize it as manipulation. They understand that someone being upset doesn't create an obligation for them to contort. They let people be disappointed. They let people be displeased. They refuse to purchase approval with pieces of their autonomy. This isn't about being unlikable. This isn't about being cruel. This is about understanding that universal approval is impossible, and the attempt to achieve it makes you a puppet. The world already contains people who will use your need to be liked as a control mechanism. You refusing to dance to that tune isn't mean. It's survival. It's necessary. It's recognizing that some disapproval is the price of having boundaries. When you master this, you become untouchable in a new way. The tactic that controls most people bounces off you. Manipulators try the disapproval move, and you don't flinch. You've cut the strings. Drop this affirmation. I release the unworthy. Number 4, emotional availability is a resource. They will drain. Machiavelli recognized that those who gave their energy freely found themselves surrounded by people who took freely. Generosity without discernment creates exploitation without end. Here's what most people don't understand about emotional availability. It's finite. You have a limited amount of emotional bandwidth. Every person you extend yourself toward draws from that resource. This seems obvious, but watch how people behave. They make themselves available to anyone who asks. They listen to the same complaints repeatedly. They absorb others' anxiety. They carry problems that aren't theirs. They pride themselves on being the person everyone comes to. They don't realize they're being drained systematically. The dirty players identify emotional givers immediately. They test boundaries by sharing increasingly burdensome problems. They watch to see if you'll absorb them. Most people pass the test. They listen, empathize, offer solutions, make themselves available for the next crisis. This seems compassionate. This seems like being a good friend. But here's what's actually happening. You've signaled that your energy is available on demand. You've trained them that their emotional needs trump your boundaries. You've created an asymmetric relationship where they withdraw and you deposit. Observe the pattern. Someone approaches with a crisis. Most people immediately engage fully. They drop what they're doing. They give their attention, their time, their emotional labor. The crisis gets resolved or doesn't. Then another crisis appears, and another. Each time, the emotional giver responds. They don't notice. They're always giving and never receiving. They don't notice the relationship only activates when the other person needs something. They don't notice they're being used. But aware people see it clearly. When someone approaches with emotional demands, They pause. They ask themselves, is this person drowning or are they addicted to being saved? Is this reciprocal or extractive? Have they earned access to my energy? They don't automatically open the valve. They protect their resource. They might offer limited support with clear boundaries. They might redirect to more appropriate sources, but they don't hand over their emotional bandwidth to anyone who asks. This isn't callousness. This isn't lack of empathy. This is recognizing that your emotional availability is valuable, and some people will exploit it without limit. The world already contains energy vampires who will drain you and move to the next source. You protecting your energy isn't mean. It's wisdom. It's understanding that you can't pour from an empty cup, and some people are designed to empty cups. When you master this, you become impossible to drain. The vampires approach and find boundaries. They find limits. They find someone who won't be their unpaid therapist. You still support people who reciprocate, but you've stopped bleeding your energy into black holes. Drop this. I guard my energy. Number 5. Strategic withdrawal teaches respect better than words than ever will. Machiavelli observed that absence can accomplish what presence cannot. Those who remove themselves from disrespect train others far more effectively than those who argue against it. Here's what people miss about boundaries. Stating them is useless without enforcement. You can articulate your limits perfectly. You can communicate clearly. You can express your needs eloquently. None of it matters if you stay when boundaries get violated. Dirty players don't listen to words. They watch actions. They test stated boundaries specifically to see if you'll enforce them. Most people fail this test. Watch this pattern everywhere. Someone violates a boundary. Most people respond with words. They explain again why that behavior doesn't work for them. They hope the other person will understand and change. This seems reasonable. It seems mature. But here's reality. The other person already understood. They violated your boundary on purpose. They're not confused. They're testing whether your stated limits have teeth. When you stay and explain again, you've given them the answer. Your boundaries are suggestions. Your limits are negotiable. Your words mean nothing. But strategic withdrawal sends a different message entirely. Someone violates your boundary. You don't argue. You don't explain again. You remove yourself. You leave the conversation. You create distance. You withdraw access to you. This is a language manipulators understand instantly. They can ignore words forever. They cannot ignore absence. Suddenly, the consequence is real. Suddenly, there's actual cost to boundary violation. Most people fear this approach. They think withdrawal is cruel. They think it's stonewalling. They think it's giving up on the relationship. But here's the truth. Staying when disrespected is what destroys relationships. It teaches people they can treat you poorly without consequence. It builds resentment in you and contempt in them. Strategic withdrawal isn't ending the relationship. It's the only thing that might save it. It's imposing a real cost that forces actual change. This isn't about silent treatment as punishment. This isn't about manipulation through withholding. This is about recognizing that your presence is valuable, and removing it when disrespected is the most honest response available. The world already contains people who will violate boundaries as long as there's no cost. You withdrawing isn't cruelty. It's clarity. It's the enforcement that makes boundaries real. When you master this, people learn fast. They realize boundary violations result in losing access to you. They realize your limits aren't optional. They realize you don't argue about respect, you simply require it or leave. You become someone whose boundaries are real. Drop this. I choose position. Number 6. Your reasons don't matter to people invested in misunderstanding. You Machiavelli understood that clarity does not prevent deliberate misinterpretation. Some people are committed to their false narrative of you because it serves them. Here's what nobody tells you about being misunderstood. Sometimes it's not a communication problem. Sometimes the other person understands you perfectly and misrepresents you anyway. They twist your words. They assign motives you never had. They interpret your actions through the worst possible lens. Most people assume this is a failure of explanation. They think if they just articulate their position more clearly, the misunderstanding will resolve. So they try again and again. They don't realize they're shadowboxing. The dirty players use deliberate misunderstanding as a weapon. They misrepresent your position because the distorted version is easier to attack. They assign you motives that make you look bad because it justifies their treatment of you. They maintain their false narrative despite your corrections because the truth doesn't serve their agenda. This isn't confusion. This is strategy. Every time you attempt to correct their misunderstanding, you give them more material to twist. You give them more attention. You give them the satisfaction of watching you scramble. Observe how this operates. Someone mischaracterizes what you said. Most people immediately try to correct the record. They explain what they actually meant. They provide context. They attempt to clear up the confusion. This seems right. It seems necessary. But here's what happens. The other person doesn't adjust their position. They double down. They find new ways to misinterpret your clarification. The cycle continues. You're trapped in an endless loop of trying to be understood by someone who refuses to understand. Aware people recognize this game instantly. When someone misrepresents them, they pay attention to the response to correction. If the person adjusts, it was genuine misunderstanding. If they persist or escalate, it was deliberate. Once identified as deliberate, the aware person stops playing. They don't provide more clarification. They don't feed more information into a system designed to distort it. They recognize that no amount of explanation will satisfy someone committed to misunderstanding. This isn't giving up on communication. This isn't refusing to clarify legitimate confusion. This is recognizing that some people weaponize misunderstanding, and your participation in their game empowers them. The world already contains people who will misrepresent you no matter what you say. You refusing to keep explaining isn't surrender. It's wisdom. It's recognizing that you can't reason with deliberate unreasonableness. When you master this principle, you become free from a trap that holds most people forever. You stop trying to control how bad faith actors perceive you. You stop exhausting yourself in pursuit of understanding from people who profit from misunderstanding you. You save your energy for people who engage honestly. Drop this. I refuse the game. Number 7. Predictability is permission for others to plan around you. Machiavelli recognized that those whose responses could be calculated found themselves outmaneuvered constantly. Mystery is a form of protection the powerful guard carefully. Here's what people don't understand about patterns. They're data. Every time you respond the same way to the same stimulus, you're providing information. You're teaching people how you work. You're making yourself easier to manage. Most people pride themselves on consistency. They think reliability is a virtue. They don't realize they've made themselves simple to manipulate. Dirty players are pattern mappers. They watch how you respond to various situations. They note what makes you angry, what makes you defensive, what makes you accommodate. They catalog your triggers. They identify your soft spots. Then they use that information strategically. They know if they do X, you'll do Y. They know if they wait until you're tired, you'll say yes. They know if they apply pressure here, you'll fold there. You've become a machine they know how to operate. Watch this dynamic. Someone wants something from you that you'd normally refuse. Most people have consistent responses, so manipulators don't approach directly. They wait. They create conditions where your usual defenses are down. They time their request for when you're rushed, stressed, distracted, or guilty. Then they ask. Your pattern-driven response kicks in. You say yes when you would have said no. They smile. They've successfully operated the machine. Smart people introduce unpredictability strategically. They don't respond to the same situation the same way every time. Sometimes they engage, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're available, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they explain, sometimes they stay silent. There's no reliable pattern to exploit. This isn't being flaky. This isn't being inconsistent in values or character. This is varying responses to make yourself harder to game. This isn't manipulation. This isn't playing games with good people. This is recognizing that predictability is a vulnerability, and the dirty players will exploit it. You varying your responses isn't being difficult. It's being strategic. It's refusing to be simple. It's maintaining the mystery that keeps manipulators uncertain. When you master this, you become impossible to plan around. People can't time you. They can't wait for your weak moment because they don't know when it is. They can't press the buttons that usually work because sometimes those buttons do nothing. You've removed the patterns they rely on. Drop this. I am unpredictable. Number 8. Distance reveals. Who was using proximity as access? Machiavelli understood that removing yourself from a situation exposes the true nature of relationships. Some people value you. Others value what they can extract from proximity to you. Here's what most people never realize. Some relationships only exist because of access. The person isn't connected to you. They're connected to what you provide. Your time, your resources, your emotional labor, your network, your status. As long as you're available, the relationship appears functional. But the moment you create distance, it collapses instantly. This reveals the truth. It was never actually a relationship. It was a transaction you didn't realize you were part of. The dirty players maintain proximity to useful people. They orbit around those they can extract value from. They smile, engage, act interested. Most people interpret this as genuine connection. They think the relationship is mutual. They invest emotionally. They don't realize they're being farmed. They don't realize that if they stopped being useful, the other person would disappear. Observe the test. Someone creates distance. Maybe they get busy with a new project. Maybe they take time for themselves. Maybe they stop being as available. Most people experience immediate clarity. Some relationships persist, others vanish. The people who actually value you reach out. They check in. They maintain connection despite distance. They treat temporary unavailability as normal and the relationship as permanent. But the users react differently. They get annoyed. They pressure you to return to previous availability. They make you feel guilty for having boundaries, or they simply disappear and reappear only when they need something. Aware people use distance strategically as a filtering mechanism. They create intentional space and watch what happens. They notice who respects the boundary and who violates it. They notice who stays connected and who only connects when extracting something. They let the distance reveal the truth about who actually values them versus who values access to them. This isn't playing games. This isn't testing people unfairly. This is recognizing that actions reveal truth better than words, and in distance is a truth accelerator. The world already contains people who fake relationships to maintain access to your resources. You creating distance to identify them isn't manipulation. It's wisdom. It's protection. It's refusing to invest in connections that are secretly transactions. When you master this principle, you surround yourself with real relationships and expose the fake ones efficiently. You stop wasting energy on people who only appeared when you were useful. You build genuine connections with those who stay regardless of utility. Drop this. I erase the unworthy. Number 9. The moment you stop chasing is the moment they notice your value. Machiavelli observed that pursuit diminishes the pursuer and elevates the pursued. Those who withdraw their chase flip the dynamic instantly. Here's what people don't understand about chasing. It communicates low value. Every text you send first, every invitation you extend repeatedly, every effort to maintain connection with someone who doesn't reciprocate. all of it broadcasts a message. You're saying their time matters more than yours. You're saying their attention is more valuable than your dignity. You're saying you're willing to do all the work. Manipulators read this clearly. You're desperate. Desperate means exploitable. Dirty players love chasers. They do minimal work and receive maximum attention. They know you'll always reach out first. They know you'll always make the plans. They know you'll tolerate breadcrumbs and call it a relationship. So they give you just enough to keep you chasing. A little attention here. A small response. There. Just enough to maintain your hope. Just enough to keep you working. You're chasing. They're relaxed. They have all the power. Watch the pattern. Someone invests heavily in a relationship that isn't reciprocal. They text first, constantly. They make all the effort. They accommodate the other person's schedule endlessly. They tell themselves the other person is just busy. They convince themselves it's not one-sided. But here's reality. It absolutely is one-sided. The other person isn't confused about what's happening. They're comfortable with the dynamic. They're receiving attention without having to earn it. But the moment you stop chasing, everything shifts. You stop texting first. You stop extending invitations. You stop being available on demand. You withdraw your pursuit energy. Now, watch what happens. Either they notice and adjust, or they don't. If they notice and adjust, you've successfully recalibrated a relationship that had become unbalanced. If they don't notice at all, you've discovered the relationship was entirely one-sided, and freeing yourself was necessary. This isn't playing games. This isn't manipulation. This is stopping behavior that establishes you as low value while giving them high value positioning. The world already contains people who will take endlessly as long as you keep giving without reciprocation. You stopping the chase isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. It's refusing to participate in dynamics where you're the only one investing. When you master this, you become magnetic in a new way. You stop repelling people with desperate energy. You stop signaling low value through one-sided pursuit. People who disappeared suddenly remember you exist. People who ignored you suddenly pay attention. You've shifted the dynamic by refusing to be the chaser. Drop this. I choose my investments. Number 10. Becoming untouchable means releasing the need to be understood. Machiavelli saw that the powerful operate with internal validation. The weak seek external confirmation for every move. The moment you stop requiring others to understand you, you become impossible to manipulate through misunderstanding. Here's what most people never learn. The need to be understood is the root of almost every manipulation vulnerability you have. You explain because you need them to understand. You justify because you need them to approve. You defend because you need them to see you correctly. Every one of these needs creates a handle that manipulators grab and twist. The dirty players don't actually care about understanding you. They care about using your need to be understood as a control mechanism. When someone misrepresents you and you rush to correct them, you've revealed your vulnerability. When someone questions your choice and you immediately explain, you've shown them the hook. When someone acts like they don't understand your boundary and you clarify repeatedly, you've demonstrated that their understanding matters more to you than your own peace. These revelations are expensive. Manipulators take notes. They've just learned exactly how to control you, make you feel misunderstood, and you'll dance forever trying to fix it. Think about how much energy you've poured into making people understand you. How many conversations spent explaining your perspective, your reasoning, your intentions? How much time invested in clearing up misunderstandings? How much effort expended trying to get someone to see you accurately? Now consider what that effort has cost you. It's cost you power. Every moment spent explaining is a moment spent operating from their frame. Every attempt to be understood is an implicit acknowledgement that their perception of you matters. Powerful people release this need entirely. They understand themselves. That's sufficient. Whether others understand them correctly is irrelevant. When someone misrepresents them, they don't scramble to correct it. When someone demands explanation, they don't provide it. When someone claims not to understand their boundary, they don't clarify endlessly. They simply move forward. Their actions speak. Their boundaries enforce themselves. Other people's confusion about them is not their problem to solve. This isn't arrogance. This isn't being difficult. This is understanding that you cannot control other people's perception, and the attempt to do so makes you controllable. The world already contains people who will deliberately misunderstand you to maintain power over you. You refusing to chase their understanding isn't mean. It's freedom. It's recognizing that some people will never understand because understanding you doesn't serve their purpose. When you master this final principle, you complete the transformation. You become untouchable because all the manipulation tactics that work on most people require you to need something from them, need their approval, need their validation, need their understanding. When you release those needs, the tactics have nothing to grab onto. The dirty players try their moves and find no leverage. You've removed yourself from the game entirely, not by becoming cold, not by becoming isolated, but by developing such unshakable internal validation that external perception loses its power over you. Drop this final affirmation. Nothing controls me. You came to this video operating on autopilot, giving your power away in small transactions you didn't even notice. You've spent years training people to disrespect you, chasing approval like it was oxygen, explaining yourself to people who were never confused, making yourself available to users who never reciprocated. You were predictable. You were manipulable. You were playing a game designed to drain you. But something shifted while you were here. You discovered that every time you explained yourself, you handed over leverage. You realized that silence unsettles manipulators far more than argument. You understood that the need to be liked is the price of admission to exploitation. You saw that emotional availability without boundaries creates vampires. You learned that strategic withdrawal teaches respect better than words ever could. You recognize that some people are committed to misunderstanding you because the truth doesn't serve them. You absorbed that predictability is permission for others to plan around you. You grasped that distance reveals who values you versus who values access to you. You internalized that the moment you stop chasing is the moment they notice your value. You mastered that becoming untouchable means releasing the need to be understood. This wasn't information. This was architecture. You've installed a new operating system. The old reflexes are being overwritten. The patterns that made you vulnerable are being deleted. You're not the same person who started this video. From this moment forward, you refuse to explain yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. You recognize manipulation tactics and you go silent instead of reactive. You protect your emotional energy like the finite resource it is. You withdraw from disrespect immediately without warning or argument. You vary your responses to prevent pattern exploitation. You create distance and watch who respects it versus who violates it. You stop chasing people who don't reciprocate your investment. You move through the world with internal validation that makes external manipulation impossible. You will notice people testing you. They'll demand explanations you don't owe. They'll try to provoke reactions you won't give. They'll act hurt to manipulate you back into old patterns. They'll manufacture misunderstandings and wait for you to chase clarity. Let them wait. Let them test. Let them try every tactic they've always used. Watch how none of them work anymore. Watch them realize you've changed. Watch them realize you're untouchable now. The dirty players will move on to easier targets. The users will disappear when distance reveals they were never really there. The manipulators will find someone else to play games with. Good. Your life isn't a game board for weak people to practice manipulation on. Your energy isn't a resource for vampires to drain. Your boundaries aren't optional. Your worth isn't up for debate. This transformation required you to see uncomfortable truths. Most people refuse to look. They prefer comfortable lies about human nature. They want to believe everyone operates in good faith. They need to maintain the illusion that niceness prevents exploitation. You don't have that luxury anymore. You've seen behind the curtain. You know the mechanics now. You can't unsee it. So now you have a choice. You can take what you've learned and let it fade. You can slip back into old patterns because they're familiar. You can keep explaining yourself, keep chasing approval, keep making yourself available to people who drain you. Nobody can force you to change. Or you can decide right now that you're done being anyone's target. You're done being predictable. You're done being manipulated. You're done giving your power away in exchange for temporary validation. That means nothing. If this video opened your eyes to manipulation tactics you've been falling for, hit that like button. Not for me, for every person who needs to see this, for everyone still operating on autopilot, for everyone currently being drained by dirty players who exploit their need for approval. That like button pushes this video to people who desperately need these defenses but don't even know they're vulnerable. You making it visible might be what saves someone from years of exploitation. Share this video with someone who's being played right now. You know who they are. The person who explains themselves constantly. The person who gets walked over repeatedly and doesn't understand why. The person who keeps getting manipulated by the same tactics. Send them this. Don't ask permission. Don't wait for the right moment. Just send it. You might change their life. Subscribe to this channel because this is just the beginning. We go deeper into power dynamics, manipulation defenses, and strategic awareness. This isn't motivation content. This isn't positive thinking. This is psychological armor. Every video on this channel is another layer of protection against a world that contains people who will absolutely exploit you if you let them. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next installation. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which principle hit hardest. Tell me which one you'll master first. Tell me which manipulation tactic you just realized you've been falling for. The community here is people who refuse to be victims. People who see reality clearly. People who understand that awareness isn't pessimism, it's survival. Add your voice. You're untouchable now. Stay sharp. Stay aware. Stay free.